Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Bree will be here shortly. She ran into some work stuff, so we're gonna start the show. She's gonna hop in later. But anyways, Zach, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We've got a coup in progress. Excited for that. Always love the mailbag episodes. I think they're really fun because we get to talk about like different fun topics that aren't, the depressing Broncos games. These are, I think, my favorite of the week. So looking forward to it.
1000%, man. The mailbag is fun because, like, I get to, I don't know, it gives me a good pulse of what Broncos country is thinking a little bit. You know, you can grab little things here and there, and kind of figure out how everybody's thinking right now. Obviously, it's not the best time to be doing mailbag questions because I think people are a little tired of the Broncos with them losing as much as they have. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun episode. We're going to obviously going to be answering your guys' questions. We put out a post earlier on Twitter asking you guys what you guys wanted to ask us here on this podcast, and we're going to highlight some of those. Frankie hops in the comments. He says, wow, my question is now the title of the entire episode. It is, Frankie. It is. But yeah, do you want to hop straight into it, Zach?
Yes, let's do it. But yeah.
Perfect. Jolene asks, how many draft picks does Peyton need to fix this mess? Obviously referring to the Broncos, obviously referring to the amount of holes they have on this offense. Zach, what is your answer here? I'm kind of excited for it. I could tell off this grin you have right now that this is about to be a ridiculous answer.
No, I'm laughing because Bree's yelling at us for starting on time, which is just...
She said you're going to be late.
I know. She said she was going to be late. We can't count on like that being 3 minutes late. She never specified. She didn't give it like, I'm about to be right back. But she's
accused us for being prompt. Damn.
That was making me laugh. But Jolene's question, it's a good one. How many draft picks? I mean, let's say he hits on like 50% of them, which is generous. That's a really, really good hit rate as a NFL GM. I don't know, 10, 15?
You think they need to hit on... Okay. Hit on 50%.
7, 8. I think you need like 7, 8. And then like you can plug some other holes in free agency. I think there's a good number of holes on this roster. And others are coming up. Safety is suddenly looking a little shaky. Hopefully Caden Stearns can take that over, but he's got the injury question marks. You're going to need a nickel corner here in the near future. You need defensive line depth. You probably need to invest some more at edge still. You need to invest some at off-ball linebacker. So even though the defense looks elite now, it can very quickly fall into disrepair. You'll need some picks on that end just to keep it rolling. And then on offense, we've both talked, I think, for the last several weeks here, how it feels like the Broncos might not have a position group on this offense that's above average outside of the tight end room.
I don't even know if that's above average.
If you want to, yeah, that's fair on the tight end stuff. I'd say slot receiver. If you break slot receiver into its own thing, you got Jerry Jeudy and Kendall Hinton, I think that's better than most slot receivers. But
we are nice at depth tackle. Let me tell you right now. No.
Right guard.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to break things down like that. But anyways, yeah, I kind of agree with you, Zach. I will say, though, a lot of this is like, I would rather have an elite quarterback or an elite head coach over any other elite position on the Broncos. So here comes Bree. I see her in the waiting room. Here she comes. Bree!
It's Bree. Bree.
Nice of you to make it.
Since when do you start on time?
How are we going to know when you were late? There was no update on like, I'll be there at 6:05.
I was ready at 6:01 and I went to go enter and it was like, this show is live. I was like, I'm just going to let them take it while I get everything set up. So welcome everybody. Let's talk Broncos and carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all good, Brie. I'll lob you the question right after I'm done with this here. So, what I was about to say was like, hey, wow, the Broncos, the fix is the word I am hyper focusing on, because until the Broncos fix quarterback or head coach, it's going to be really hard. I don't even know if there's an amount of draft picks you can do, because I think that I would rather have, like I said earlier, an elite head coach or an elite quarterback over anything else on that offensive unit. So it's going to be really hard to fix it. I'm not sure. To get it up to speed, I think Zach's kind of right with his maybe, hey, if I'm going to hit on half of them, maybe I need 7 guys. I need seven guys I hit on to be able to make this offense work.
And what I'll say on there really quick, that's about 2 drafts. You get roughly 7 picks a draft with comp picks and trades and everything. It's different. And I think if you look at tearing this thing down, rebuilding, cutting Russell Wilson, as I've talked about on this show frequently, and how it's feasible, the structure there is, it's the Bills model. It's what the Giants are doing this year. They just surprised themselves and ended up winning a lot of games. You tear things down, you eat a lot of bad contracts, you eat a lot of dead cap, you cut players, and you prepare to be bad in year 1. Following year 1, you draft your really nice rookie quarterback that you're excited about. In this world, hopefully Caleb Williams, and then hopefully you're ready to go. So that's 2 drafts, roughly 15 picks. I think the Broncos could, again, if they hit and find like 7 quality contributors, most of those being on offense, I think they could have a mid-level defense and a solid offense, and not like a Super Bowl contender, but like a good team, and be the first good Broncos team in 7, 8, 9 years.
Yeah, it's true. And you do see teams without elite quarterbacks be good. It's just so much easier to build a team when you do have an elite quarterback, right? Like a lot of that needing a perfect roster, a lot of those holes on your team all of a sudden get a lot smaller. Like they're not that big of a deal when you do have that elite quarterback. But Bree, do you have an answer here, or do you want to add on to anything Zach and I said?
Yeah, I walk onto the pod and we're talking about tearing everything down to the foundation, to the studs, to the wood and rebar that makes up the basement level of the structure. I'm a little concerned, but I get it. I do understand. Although, I think I'm getting cold feet, y'all. I don't know. I'm worried that it's a disintegrate the entire organization now. Like, I don't know if that's really where I'm at. And I see that the question is, how many draft picks does Peyton need to fix this mess? I don't know if draft is the answer here. I think that there's a lot of a perfect storm going on. And I don't know if I like how I almost called him Jack again, how Zach was saying it's going to take next year's and the following years. But I think that Broncos country is in an uncomfortable position that they've been dealing with for the last 7 years. And I don't know if that changes with a couple of drafts. I think it changes with a culture change. I think it changes with some time and some patience, which I don't think I have. And so I echo the sentiments of a lot of Broncos country when they're frustrated with how everything looks. Go ahead.
No, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to go silently. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're good.
So you don't want to see things disintegrated, but you also don't think the path is necessarily building it up. What do you think the path to fixing this mess is?
I think that's where I don't have an answer. So I don't want to be the one giving one, because my strong opinion was, wow, Russell Wilson really isn't working out. But I was super patient with the likes of Drew Lock. So maybe I don't know what's best for the team. So maybe I'm just worried that the idea of firing Peyton in his second year, getting rid of the quarterback that you just traded for, not having a whole lot of draft picks, it just feels like in an uncomfortable position that'll take a lot of years to get out of. I don't know if it's a firsthand turnover kind of thing. And I don't just mean Russell Wilson's contract. I mean, in general, building this team back up if you just dissolve all of it.
Yeah, I also want to add on that I guess we're just looking at draft. There's other ways to fix your team, right? Like there's trade and free agency. Those are 2 big avenues to fix your team, as well as draft picks. So I don't know. Like you can fix it in a multitude of ways. If the Broncos weren't so, if the quarterback position wasn't such like a anchor right now on the Broncos, right? Because it's not just the way he's playing, but it's also you have to deal with the salary cap of that, right? So it probably is, for me, in my opinion, the best way to infuse talent in this roster is through the draft, because you're going to need cheap players with that big contract. You can go out there and sign players, but not like you could if you had a rookie quarterback. We've seen it with the Chargers with Herbert, right? We saw it with the Chiefs with Mahomes when he was on his rookie contract. It opens up the floodgates for you when you're able to have a cheap quarterback like those teams did.
Yeah, and that's why I think you need to move off this. And that's why I disagree with Bree some. Like, I agree that blowing it up now is scary, but I think like doubling down on what looks like obvious mistakes and compounding errors is scarier, to me at least, because that's how you dig this hole deeper, and that's how you find yourself in a situation where things really are bad, because the Broncos are going to be limited on assets, and it's going to be easy for the roster to get worse around Russ. Part of the concession of signing a quarterback to that type of contract is knowing the roster is going to be worse around him. You're paying the quarterback that amount of money because you expect them to elevate the roster. And at this point, he's doing the opposite. He's drowning the roster. So I think it's like, let it fall into disrepair or get on it now. And I don't think you have to fire Peyton. I don't know if that's necessarily the answer. I think Ryan Edwards put out a strong argument today about like what strong GM candidate is hopping on that job with all that dead cap, having to find a new quarterback, having to find a new coach, and like not their own original high draft picks. Down to top 40 picks this year. It's not an appealing job. I would hope that I'm praying that George Payton can take his medicine this offseason, cut the quarterback, not compound his errors, trying to save his job, and can find a path to job security through selling the Walton Penner Group on a rebuild. And I think that's the best path towards fixing the Broncos in the least amount of time.
I don't think that we were in disagreement necessarily. I think that it just, like most things, I tend to repeat some mistakes that maybe I shouldn't have. So I was, thinking over the options of what could go wrong here. And Ryan Edwards' argument specifically is the one that kind of made me double think of like, wow, I really don't think I want to see that far of a move made. But I think that it goes hand in hand with the decision of whether or not you're trying to fix Russ. And then Joey's point of whether or not Peyton is tied in with Russ being the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. It's just crazy. I think that it's almost surreal having this conversation in week, what are we in now? 12, that this is what the conversation that we're having about this team. And so I think that it is really hard sometimes to just take that in a non-biased and balanced approach.
Totally. And Ryan did make a really good point, like, to that. Now, I wonder, though, because I don't follow this as closely as I probably should. I know GM jobs are kind of hard to come by. It's not like the head coaching cycle where you have 5 openings every single year. I don't think it's really like that. Like, the lifespan of a GM seems to be longer, in my opinion, than the lifespan or the career span, right, of a head coach. It's just like the ladder, right? Like, the GM can fire the coach, they can hire a new coach, and that kind of gives them a little bit more of a leeway. Oh, let's try this guy out first before you fire me, type thing. I wonder if it's actually like, if there's many people, because I know we saw it with George Payton, but I wonder if there's many people that actually turn down GM jobs. I don't know. And that's something I'd have to do more research on, but I don't know if that's like, if that opportunity is presented to you, you actually turn it down.
It's less about getting turned down, I think, and more about like being last in line because you're the least appealing job. And so you're getting the 5th best candidate or whatever. And there will be openings this year. Like, the Colts could move off their GM, Chris Ballard. He's on the hot seat. If you have John Robinson's already out, so that's 2. If George Payton's out in this world, that would be 3. Then you're looking at Steve Keim is on the hot seat in Arizona. That's 4. Carolina Panthers and Scott Fitterer. He's a dead man walking. He's almost definitely going to be fired. That's 5. Trent Baalke's probably sticking around in Jacksonville, but he's a name to watch. That could be 6. So
I
somewhere
wonder
between
though.
4 and 6, and the Broncos would probably be in any of those worlds. If you're firing Peyton, you're cutting Wilson too. And well, I think it's smart in the short term. You'd have to afford your GM a lot of job security. It'd have to be like the Lions job or the Falcons job, where they hired their GM and they went, hey, we know this is a 2-3 year rebuild. We're gonna we know that coming in, you're not on the hot seat for a minute. I think that's the only way to get a good candidate in that world.
Cool, guys. Well, I think we had a really good conversation about that one. Let's move on to the next question here. Frankie chimed in, crediting himself earlier for naming the show. Frankie at Frankie Film asks, how many additional games would the Broncos team have won if Tim Patrick and Javonte Williams were healthy all year? Do you guys have an opinion on that?
Yeah. I think they would have won quite a few more games. Honestly, Tim Patrick would have been the steadiest piece in this offense, and Javonte Williams would have given them some semblance of a run game. The vision stuff wasn't there, granted, but Javonte Williams is so talented. He's still a productive running back in spite of that, and he was a productive running back this year. I don't think it's totally coincidence, and they were like totally ugly wins. But when you look at like their points per drive, their two of their like 4 best performances of the season are that Texans game and that Seahawks game. And then you play the 49ers, the best defense in the league, but they were like scoring enough to win those games. They were getting something going. I think the Texans game in particular was their best rushing game of the season. There with Javonte Williams. And we've talked about it. You just need some sort of a run game to help support Russ at this stage in his career. And I think Javonte Williams would have created enough of a run game that opposing defenses would have had to respect it. He could have been a weapon out of the backfield too. And then with Tim Patrick, you get a really reliable, steady receiver, and the Broncos could use that right now. Again, it's at this point, Russ has always been high variance, and at this point, you're missing the high highs. Adding some more stability in the mix to balance out the low lows would be valuable.
I think at the start of the season, you would have said that it would have made an impact. Like, who would have foretold that this is the position that the Broncos would have been in? But because of that variability, Zach, I don't know if that would have changed it too much. I would hope so. Like, you would hope in your heart of hearts that a Tim Patrick and Javonte Williams led offense would help Russ and the Denver Broncos find the red zone more often. But from what we've seen and from his inability to be able to use the consistency that has been out there, I'm actually going to take the opposite side of this and say that I don't think there would be that many more wins in the win column. I think maybe you see Javonte Williams stepping up when Melvin Gordon was struggling there, when he was already out and Melvin was on the way out. I would hope that Tim Patrick would have made a difference, but with the way we're seeing Russ really missing guys, if he was that keystone piece and he was the only savior available, I could see where maybe it would come into play, but I'm seeing it make a 1 to 2 game difference. And even then, I think it would have been the close games that were on the bounce of the ball. Joey?
Yeah, so here's my question, right, Zach? If you think
3-4,
the Broncos get significantly better with just these 2 players, right? And I think Tim Patrick will be back next year.
Not significantly. I think they win more games. I think they're still a bad team. I think you look at how they've I think all but 2 of their losses have been on 1 possession. And one of those is on 9. A 9 possession loss. And I think Javonte Williams and Tim Patrick are the 2 Jenga pieces of this offense. I think you have 3 games that went to overtime this year. I think those 2 players combined are maybe worth a point, half a point on those margins. And overtime games alone, that would be, if you can just avoid those games going to overtime by getting 1 more point in regulation. And those games like the recent Raiders game where it's Melvin Gordon fumbling on the 1 yard line, hopefully Javonte Williams doesn't do that. What else? What are the other ones? the Chargers game and the Colts game. Like the Colts game, the offense was so bad. I imagine, and there were so many opportunities. I feel like if you had Tim Patrick and Javonte Williams in that game, you could have scored more than 9 in regulation. Maybe one of those 3 field goal drives ends up being a touchdown drive instead, and then all of a sudden that turns into a win. I don't think they're a significantly better team. I think the margins have been so small for the Broncos this year, and they're consistently going the wrong way, that if you have Javonte Williams and Tim Patrick, like 2 of the most reliable and best offensive pieces on this team, I think you win 3-4 more games. But they're still a bad team, and they look fraudulent.
Okay, so here's my question, though. This is what I was getting to. If they're like these 2 players away, right? Because I don't think running back is that entirely hard to find. I think Javonte Williams is extremely talented, but you can go and get a running back. I think Tim Patrick, with his injury, we've seen players come back from Tim Patrick's injuries before and come back and play well. I guess my question is, like, how far away are actually the Broncos then? Like, what if they go out into this offseason and sign Elton Jenkins to go along with that and draft a receiver and improve this offense? How many more wins then? Are we looking at like more of a playoff team, or like what? Like, are they closer than we actually think?
I don't think so, because the defense is going to regress most likely. I think you're already seeing signs of that with trading Chubb and losing some of the pass rush. And I think just Russell Wilson is so limited at this point in his career. I also don't know if you're getting this many one-score games next year. Like, so much of that is the product of the defense. I'm saying, like, hey, instead of that game going to overtime at 9-9 or 16-16, maybe the Broncos win 17-16, or they win 10-9 in regulation. I don't think that they're 2 players away from this offense looking a lot better, from this team being a lot better. I think when you look at what Javonte Williams and Tim Patrick provide and how narrow the margins have been, that they could have gotten the Broncos over the hump in a good number of those games.
Zach, can I ask you about the pass rush and what regression that you've seen there since Chubb has left? Obviously, he's doing tremendous in Miami, but are you actually seeing limitation being placed there on the Denver Broncos defense?
Definitely. I think it was back this week for the most part. And you're down Gregory too. You know, maybe when you get Gregory and Browning back, you see what the healthy version of that room looks like. Though, if I'm honest, I think the Broncos would be wise to shut Gregory down for the rest of the season. Just what's he giving you at this point? So you'd have Browning and Gregory next year as your tandem going into the season. Like, I'd feel pretty good about that. The depth doesn't look as good with Benito looking like a miss, but maybe he takes a leap going into year 2. That's always very possible. I don't know. They're not the like, they were looking like the Cowboys for the first 6-7 weeks of the season. It was like the 2 stories of pressure in the NFL were the Broncos and the Cowboys, and they were kind of achieving it in different ways. The Cowboys were doing it just doing crazy stuff with Micah Parsons and the rest of their talented front players. And the Broncos were being a little more creative and scheming it up with Evero. But they were the 2 stories of pressure, I think, in the NFL, because they were winning at like crazy, like north of 35-40% rates each. And now the 2 weeks immediately following the Chubb trade, they were more pedestrian. And then I think they saw a return to form against Baltimore.
This is spurring a lot of questions. Sorry, Joey, not to get off track whatsoever. But when you see that missing in your edge, are you looking for that to be made up with, let's say, your inside linebackers? So when you start seeing, Josie and Singleton just playing at a different level, does an evolution there on the line start to look better for the Broncos? Do they need to overcommit with the edge? Like, I'm just is the edge room really a concern, or okay?
Definitely. Baron Browning has a pretty solid injury history dating back to Ohio State, as does Randy Gregory. With the fact there's a very, very, very good chance Peyton is fired after the 2023 season, and how Randy Gregory's contract lines up, there's an excellent chance you're moving off of Randy Gregory after 2023. And so immediately you're going to need another starter. I think the hope was that after 2 seasons, kind of as a designated pass rusher, that Nick Bonito would be ready to go, and he's not. I don't think he will be, rather.
All right, guys. Well, there we go. I thought that was a really good question by Frankie, by the way. It's kind of just like eyeing on two very specific players, and I think it really focuses on like how far the Broncos actually are away in some way, I guess. I think that Zach made a really good point in like, hey, this defense might not be exactly the same this next year. I do think though that Evero has done a good job despite injuries. Like the defense really hasn't dropped off, even when talent has gone down a little bit. Like talent is massive, it's huge, but Evero has done a good job of evolving past that. I kind of want to hop in the comments real quick. Rock says, Patrick would help the pass game a little bit, but I don't know how much how much he would matter when most problems there fall on Russ. He also says Williams would be fun to watch, but not super impactful. Frankie asked kind of a two-part question here, so I want to get into that as well. He said this was meant to be a two-parter. Does the difference in win-loss change the opinion on Russ, Hackett, Peyton at all? For me personally, I don't think so. I don't. I think that you can see bad quarterback play. Like there's been quarterbacks like, for example, the 49ers, right? Like we've known, despite them being good, we've all known that it's time to probably look for a new quarterback other than Jimmy Garoppolo. The Rams are another great example of that. The Rams were fine with Jared Goff. They just needed that guy to take the next step. I don't really think it changes. Maybe Hackett's does a little bit. I think people are less angry about the X and O side of everything. I bet people are complaining less about the play calls with talent in there. But yeah, I want to ask this question to you guys. What do you guys think?
I think it'd be looking worse for Russ because so many people I've seen defending Russ's play are like, well, look at the injuries. And it's like, well, even when the offense was really healthy and like they were only down Tim Patrick, he looked terrible. So I think it's a weak excuse. If you took that excuse away from them, I don't know. I wonder if it would dial up the seat on him. Otherwise, no, I don't think it changes anything. It's just, yeah, he's a bad quarterback. When everything's going right, when it's a good play call and the guy gets separation and gets open and it's the right read and everything, he just doesn't pull the trigger on it. He can't see it, or he doesn't see it, or he doesn't think he can make the throw, or whatever it may be. Like even when everything goes right around him, he can't make plays. So I just struggle to expect that like next year, when more things are right around him and you have better roster talent and a better coach, that like it's going to look great, because even on like the rare occasions it looks great now, the quarterback can't execute it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it shifts the court of public opinion a little bit, because wins make Broncos fans happy and losses make them quite angry with pitchforks in hand. So I think that if there were a couple more wins, it maybe would make them less quick to turn their ugly heads. But right now, I don't think that it changes the overall assessment of how Russ is playing. That's interesting, though. That's an interesting concept because we wouldn't know. We wouldn't know unless we were actually going through it. But I think the Broncos being at 5 wins right now doesn't really change how I feel about things. If they're at 7, that's a different story. We were able to watch 5 wins last season, is all I'm saying. So go ahead, Joey.
Okay, cool. I think we kind of nailed that topic, if I'm being honest. Like that was a really good second part of the question too, as well, Frankie. But do you guys want to hop into the next one here? I think Patrick Chiotti, my man Pat, he's going to be on the podcast soon, so keep an eye out for that. He asked, does Hackett officially take the worst coach in team history title? Bree, what is your opinion on that?
I know everyone wants me to say what, Josh McDaniels. I don't know if Hackett's done that level of decision making and game management that happened there. I mean, it depends on what you prefer in a bad head coach, I guess. I prefer wins. I don't know. Vance Joseph wasn't very great. No, because it's going to feel like recency bias if I say that he is. I would think that what happened with McDaniels and the overall run of the team while he was under helm was terrible. I do understand that. I do understand why Broncos country would be angry at that. And then Vance Joseph just had an effect to him that was just not working out. But it's trending that way. If you ask me at the end of the season and nothing has changed, we learn nothing from it, he gets retained, God forbid, I think I would have a different answer to that. But right now, I'm having a hard time because I feel like it's just a lot of emotional reaction if I say yes.
Okay.
I think I'd go McDaniels because you see the very next year, like John Fox takes over and is not like the most impressive NFL head coach, as like everyone knows who John Fox is. Um, and immediately with Tim Tebow at quarterback, they're a playoff team. And yeah, it was a weak AFC West and they got in at 8-8. But they won a playoff game. And still, like the turnaround from 4-12 to 8-8 with Tim Tebow as quarterback, I think is pretty kind of telling about the McDaniels thing. Also, he had a greater negative impact on the roster. It's not like Hackett was the reason they traded for Russell Wilson. If like Hackett was this big coach get and demanded the Russell Wilson trade, kind of like McDaniels kind of forced Cutler out, I think there'd be a tougher comparison. But I don't know. I think Hackett got dealt a really brutal hand and is a bad head coach, but he just got dealt a terrible hand.
The double whammy.
McDaniels.
Frankie chimes in the comment section here. He said, if Hackett went 7-10 this year with this version of Russ, I bet he'd get a year too. I think this is a really, really good point because life as an NFL head coach isn't fair, guys. A lot of it just comes down to your record. Circumstance does not matter to these decision makers because it doesn't to the owners. It really doesn't. They want to see results. They don't really care about the circumstances at all. I think I want to chime in here about this question as well, though. I think that McDaniels is worse just because it felt like he had so much control over the roster as well, like the personnel on the roster. It felt like it. It felt like McDaniels had control over both, and it was just like the 1-2 punch of bad. When you have a bad head coach that also has as much control as McDaniels did over the roster in general, like I don't know, it's just not a very good. It's not a very good mix there. But let's hop into this one here. Why is Dre not producing? Do y'all think he's still butthurt over Chubb? In my opinion, with Chubb character and all, is a Super Bowl caliber D. What do you guys think about that?
My problem is the question. Why is Dre not producing? He is producing.
Yeah.
He is on pace to have like the best season of his career in terms of pressures, in terms of sacks, in terms of pressure rate, in terms of pass rush win rate. He's currently fourth in the NFL among interior defensive linemen in terms of pass rush win rate. He's, there's like Aaron Donald, there's Chris Jones, there's Malik Collins, and then there's Draymond Jones, which Malik Collins might surprise people. Again, some of that's the Micah Parsons stuff and what they're doing in Dallas. But right behind Aaron Donald and Chris Jones, he's producing really, really good. I'm happy with it.
There we go. Okay, cool. We got another comment here, or a question here from our very own Zach Seekers. Where would the Denver Broncos offense rank if everything else was the same, but they had Patrick Mahomes? This is an interesting question, Zach, because I think it highlights what is the big difference between Pat Mahomes and Russell Wilson. How much of an impact does that actually make? So yeah, let's get into it. What do you guys have to say about that one?
Am I going to go first because it was you?
I asked the question. I feel like I got to throw it to you guys first.
Ooh, so wait a second, though. Is Patrick Mahomes coming from Kansas City or was he in Denver to begin? This is an important delineation for this discussion.
I don't think it does.
Neither, actually, because I think if you're taking him from Kansas City, you're giving the Broncos like a leg. I guess they haven't played the Chiefs yet, so it'd be fine to do that. I'm saying this is a Mahomes clone. This is Patrick Mahomes.
They had a Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know my sci-fi well enough, but it's like memories carry over, implant everything. It is Patrick Mahomes, Kermit voice to the nines. It is Patrick Mahomes, all the ability, photographic memory, all that stuff. He is him. And it's nothing to do with the Russell Wilson contract either. That gets evaporated and you get Matrick Mahomes in an identical contract.
I think they're over 500. I think they're right behind Kansas City. I think that level of play caller, game manager, talent, not in regression, is able to, who's still growing with a system, hoping that the Patrick Mahomes system fits in with Hackett. So that actually poses an issue there. But I still think that they're in a much better spot than they are right now, and they're definitely competing with the Chargers.
Okay. For me here, I think the difference is drastic. There's some quarterbacks, right, guys? I saw it with Aaron Rodgers for years in a Mike McCarthy offense that I didn't really like in Green Bay. He still produced. The coach obviously matters massively, helps the quarterback. It's like the biggest helping hand. But Patrick Mahomes, we've seen it. He can make something out of nothing and do it consistently. I've seen it with the Broncos this year. Like, Russell Wilson has been missing on things or has been hesitant on things all year long. I think Patrick Mahomes makes a massive impact to this Broncos team. I think the injuries definitely hurt. Are we having as good of a season with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback as we would have hoped? Probably not, because of the injuries. But is the difference drastic? It's huge. It's the most important position in football. There's nothing like it. You can't compare anything like it almost in any sport. Going from what has been bad quarterback play this year to elite quarterback play, it would make a very, very huge difference. Do you guys have anything else to add on to that?
I fully agree. I think it would be game changing. I asked these questions with a rhetorical goal in mind, and we'll get there after my second one. I think the offense would be tremendously different.
Okay, well, there we go. Let's hop into the next one then. And guess who it's by? Another one by Zach Seegers. I know him. Where would the Denver Broncos offense rank if everything else was the same, but they had Kyle Shanahan? Ooh. Bree, I'm going to let you start off with this one. What do you think?
No, now I feel like I'm backed in a corner because this is all a narrative building exercise.
It is.
I think the quarterback is an important piece. I don't think it changes it that much. I think it actually changes it less than having a clone of Patrick Mahomes, but I still think it's an important piece, right? And it's Kyle Shanahan. So would he be able to put the foot down and do what's best for this team? I think so. I think Kyle Shanahan is not a comparable coach to Hackett. So Denver Broncos offense ranks about similarly, fighting against the Chargers because they're still outweighed and outbalanced.
Okay. Zach, what do you think?
I disagree. I don't think the Broncos offense is all that different. I don't think this Broncos offense is built to do what Kyle Shanahan is great at. I don't think they've got the pieces to do it. And I also think and it's also not even a scheme thing for me, really. Put whatever smart, brilliant offensive mind with this group. Put Andy Reid with this crew. And I think the offense is better. I don't think it's the worst scoring offense since the expansion Browns. I think it's probably 18th, 17th. I think you could get mediocrity out of it, but I don't think it's good. I think with Patrick Mahomes instead of Russell Wilson, it could be good because quarterback's, in my mind, a little more important, and that guy's just that special. I think replacing Hackett with Reid, I think Reid would be still so handcuffed by, one, the injuries, but two, and mainly, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson cannot play within the box that modern defenses force him to play in with the two high shells. And I don't know. That's the reason I asked this question. I think it's a thought experiment that kind of shows the point a little bit.
It is. So here's the thing with the coaches. It's more so, it's rare you see, if you're changing scheme drastically, you usually are going to see some sort of turmoil in that year one, right? Because you're going to have players that don't fit in that scheme. I think that's what people are kind of forgetting with this whole Broncos switching head coaches this next year. I guess like a lot of the Broncos players are on the offense are replaceable anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But like usually, like I remember Vic's first year as head coach, and when everything was changing, like it took a little bit for them to get the correct styled players on that defense to fit his scheme, right? I think the difference between Vic and Evero has been really good, but they do similar things. Like it's not the same, but you're not asking players, like we're not all of a sudden like the most man heavy defense in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like we haven't changed massively. We're not all of a sudden going into a one high system consistently. But this is interesting. I think the Broncos would still be bad this year, but I think the Broncos would be a lot better long term, would be my answer to this question. And I want to hop in the comment section here. Let's see. Let's go. We're having a Draymond Jones discussion in here, and I want your guys' opinion on this real quick.
It's not a discussion; it's a fight.
No, it's a fight. People are fighting over this. They have 5 sacks earlier this season before the Chubb trade. Colton Cooper-Hobson, he says that sacks aren't end-all be-all for D-line at all. And then, yeah, so what are your guys' opinion on all of this Draymond Jones chatter going on in the chat?
Well, you don't have to ask me twice. Definitely not sacks end-all be-all. Definitely pressures are up there, though. Zach, please take it away.
Yeah, I think he's playing really well still. I disagree. Like if you look at since the Bradley Chubb trade, which is let's get rid of the season long stuff and look at just since the Bradley Chubb trade, his pass rush win rate is still really good. PFF calculates it differently, but he ranks 17th over that stretch. So granted, a decline, but I don't know if you can compare that one-to-one with the ESPN ones because, like, for example, Bradley Chubb is ranked, I think, 20th or something by PFF, but is ranked 2nd by ESPN. So I wouldn't compare the rankings one-to-one. But what I think is fair to compare are just pure pressure numbers. On the season, Draymond Jones is 7th in pressures. Over the last 4 weeks since the trade, he's 17th. So, yeah, a drop-off, but he's still got 10 pressures over that time. And Carolina's offensive line, sneaky, really good. Tennessee's offensive line is solid. The Raiders aren't great, and Baltimore's pretty good. So that could also be an explanation in my mind.
So the term sacks come in bunches. I think that's a real life thing, guys.
Von Miller knows.
Because of how much luck goes into it. I wrote an article on this on Mile High Sports a little bit ago. I'll link it on my Twitter after this, but it was detailing just how much luck goes into a sack and how we probably shouldn't look at sacks as the number for this. And I'm not faulting anybody in the chat for thinking this because it's true. Like you look at sacks and you look at the best pass rushers. We're constantly checking the all-time sack list to see where Von ranks on the list and all of that. But think about it, guys. Like, how many sacks do you see that are actually clean beat off the edge or from the interior, and they actually get the sack? More times than not, the quarterback might be holding onto the ball too long. That ends up into a sack. Maybe an edge rusher comes free off the edge. Quarterback rolls out to the left, and the other guy gets a cleanup sack. There's so many different ways you can get a sack that I'm not sure it's the best way to be evaluating it. Yeah, that's just kind of my opinion on that one. But yeah, any more questions? Let me see, Chad. This is your last time here to get any more questions before we end the podcast. Frankie says Draymond has getting banged up the last couple of weeks. He's exited to get checked out and popped up in the injury report a few times. This is true. Draymond Jones has been beat up a little bit. But yeah, any parting words, guys?
Well, yeah, I have to let our LTB listeners know about something really special because we haven't talked about signables yet.
Oh, it's a very special signables time yet. Bree, take it away.
You were just going to leave, and I didn't get to cover your beautiful faces. LTB listeners, you know what time it is. We just wanted to tell you a little bit about Signables, a cool new way to display your fanhood in your home, office, or fan cave. Signables are flat, digitally printed signatures of your favorite players and your favorite teams. Zach has an Aaron Rodgers. We can show you the Russell Wilson, but they're a perfect gift for your favorite football fan this holiday season. Collect your favorite player or your favorite team and go check them out at signables.com.
Plus, I have breaking news, guys.
Breaking news.
Breaking
What?
news. You can now
this
get
is
your
exciting.
Russell Wilson signable for 30% off.
Yeah, that's right.
You can go on the Signables website and get it for 30% off.
Limited.
Plus, it has no correlation to how he's playing.
No, nothing to do with that at all. It's just they wanted to. It's a Christmas gift, really. It's hey everybody, let's hey little Timmy, let's walk down the stairs. Let's look under the Christmas tree. Oh, what is that? 33% off Russell Wilson signables. Whoa, let's get it.
Whoa.
Not only that, Aaron
right?
Rodgers, 33% off. Javonte Adams, 33% off. Whoa.
Coop, you're hilarious. Thank you for that comment.
Yeah. But anyways, I encourage everybody to go get a signables. Great, as Zach says, Christmas present. I think that if it were me personally, I'd probably go after the Josh Allen or the Joe Burrow signables. I think that's a little bit of a better. Frankie says, I need a Coach Prime signable. That's it. This is facts. We need a Coach Prime signable.
I would buy 50
Prime
Coach
on it.
signables.
I'm in for right now. I am beyond excited about that.
You know what signable I wouldn't buy? I'm going to be honest with you. One signable I wouldn't buy. There's only one of them. Patrick Mahomes. That signable is $1 more than all the rest. That's not a bang for your buck. You've got to get the Russell Wilson signable.
Exactly. Well, anyways, guys, this was a really fun episode. I always really enjoy going through the comments and through the questions. The mailbag episode is just a blast because, like I said at the beginning of this, you really get to go through these thought experiments. And Zach had some good questions. Frankie had a really good question. Pat had a really good question. Got loaded up with the good questions today. But Zach, where can they find your awesome work, my man?
They can find it under a mountain of signables. All my writing over at milehighsports.com, shorter blurbs at Zach_Seegers on Twitter.
What the listeners don't know is that we actually had to pre-purchase all those signables. So they're just in the garage right now, right? So we are literally drowning in the signables. I kid, of course, but please go check out both Zach and Joey's excellent work over on milehighsports.com. Click the Broncos tab. It's right there, usually right at the top of the page. And you can listen to me every single Monday on the Fan Cave, 1 to 2 p.m. for Mile High Sports Radio, every single day here with the Let's Talk Broncos crew. Joey.
Yeah, and then everyone, make sure you're following me at Mile High Sports. Give Frankie and I's draft podcast a listen on Thursday. We are talking wide receivers part 2. I have a guy I really like. Probably my biggest draft crush until the moment. I need you guys to listen to it. I'm really excited about to talk about the player. I'm not putting out any clips or anything. We're really talking about how excited I am until that. And then I'm going to be writing about the needs the Broncos have as well. So that's everything. And you can find that at Mile High Sports. When that comes out, I'll make sure to tell you guys when it does. Yeah. But, Zach, did you have something to say?
Yeah, we got a comment really quick. Will we see any snaps for Alberto before the season's end? No, 0% chance. They will sign a guy off the street, I believe, before they give Alberto snaps. Man, he's been banished to the shadow realm. He's gone. Wow.
Even after Hack mentioned it in his presser today?
I'm not believing it.
Okay. Well, then that actually shocks me even more. Thank you for that bit of insider information, Zach Seegers. Joey, close us out.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, go Broncos. Hopefully we can get a win. See you guys. Till next time.